Okay, hello. Welcome to chapter 5. Okay. A year in Burr Oak. If I'm saying that right half the time. Okay. Uh, Almost everyone we meet in crying hard times if they live where grasshoppers are, wrote Laura's grandmother Holbrook. Grandma, and the rest of the Quinter Ingalls relatives were all concerned to hear that Charles and Caroline and the girls had no home. Although the families were widely separated, they were new news of each other through what they call the circulator. It was a letter mailed from family to family. Each added news to the bottom of the letter and passed it on to Grandma Holbrook, wrote on Laura's family. I wonder when they will stop being police. I should be glad for their sake. They have a hard time of it since they left Pepin. When Pa drove the covered wagon into Uncle Peter's yard near South Troy, Minnesota, Laura forgot for a moment the hardships of the long trip to the fact that baby Freddie was often sick again. There was cousins to play with Peter, Alice, Elia, Edith, and Lansford. Well, it's almost like brothers and sisters to Laura, Mary, and Carrie, since Aunt Eliza was Ma's sister and Uncle Peter was Pa's brother. The children went on double cousins. Uncle Peter and Aunt Eliza urged Pa and Ma to stay with them for the rest of the summer. They were not needed in Burr Oak until autumn. Together, the two families told 13 people with so many people in the house. There were many chores to do, and there was children to keep busy. Mary and the 14-year-olds Alice worked along with Ma and Aunt Eliza, cooking and tending the babies. Freddie and Lansford, Laura, Ella, and Peter were put in charge of the cows. Laura loved the daily task of watching the cows and guarding the haystacks that Pa and Uncle Peter had made. The Zambro River flowed along the edge of Uncle Peter's pasture, and Laura and the cousins explored its bank as their bare feet padded through the soft green grass. They were mindful of the thinking cowbells, and their cows were it. It would never do for a cow to wander off to near the town, the hay being saving for the winter. Wild plums grew along the Sambo River. Just as they had Plum Creek, when one of the cousins found a cluster of autumn deep in a plum thicket, he would or she would yell, and the rest of the children would come bringing the juicy fruit. Sometimes they would have white fires and roasted crab apples, or bites of bread and meat. As the sun set, near the cousins found the cows found them, and they all went back to the stable for the milking time. Through the long summer days, Laura worried about baby Freddie. He was 9 months old and sickly. Pa and Ma were so concerned that they had a doctor come to examine the baby. The weeks were shadowed by the illness. Laura remembered the awful day. It was August 27th, 1876, when Freddie straightened out his little body and was dead. Not far from Uncle Peter's house, Charles Freddie Ingalls was buried under a little white gravestone. The sad days that followed were even sadder because Pa and Ma and the girls knew that soon they would have to leave Freddie behind alone. And alone in the little prairie, but they would have never forgot him. Oh yeah, I just had to pause for a second because of that. Where okay, Charles and Ingalls posed for the for this photo soon after the 1860 wedding. Okay, and here is a picture. Okay, Carrie, Mary, and Laura Ingalls around 1880. Okay, here's the baby Grace Ingalls is right here. Okay, and then Ingalls family posted their portrait before Laura moved into Mansfield in 1894, sitting Carrie, Laura, and Grace seated by Pa Mary. Okay, I don't know where. Oh. And the Wilder house in the village of Minnesota, in a complete and rocky ridge form of Mansfield, is 1907, and the company home Rocky Ridge Farm around 1913. Okay, and here's the picture, and then I had to find where to go. Okay. The Minnesota autumn was so cool and crisp. When Pa and Ma loaded the wagon once again, it was time to meet their promise to the hotel keepers in Burr Oak, Iowa, saying goodbye to Uncle Peter's family. Pa drove the wagon south. They crossed Minnesota state line into the state of Iowa. Burr Oak was just 3 miles away when Pa's wagons rumbled into the village Burr Oak and drove down the long main street. Laura saw immediately that it was far different from the fresh western news of Walnut Grove. Burr Oak, Laura said, was an old town built of red brick. I liked it new town better, and I knew Pa did too. At the early time, Burr Oak had been on the crossroads of the Western movement. The road going north led to Minnesota. The trail from the banks of Mississippi ran westward for Burr Oak across Iowa, Nebraska, Hawaii to Pacific Coast. Sometimes as many as 200 covered wagons had sought to spend the night. Burr Oak. The pioneers would camp into clusters. Among the tall oak groves on the top of the yards, neat brick houses, there were bricks mill in the village, and a stone quarry nearby. So many buildings were constructed of stone or brick. There was 2 hotels still business, Burr Oak, when the Ingalls family arrived. The business was American House's stagecoach made its stop there. The other hotel was Burr Oak House. Someone called it Masters Hotel for its most recent owner had been William Masters, that where Pa stopped the wagon. The hotel was the new home of the Ingalls family. The Burr Oak seemed very grand up. Laura was built in a hill slope down to Silver Creek. The lower level of the hotel included the kitchen, the dining room, and the sleeping space. From the street doors open to the Tarvin room. The hotel office and parlor, a big bedroom off the parlor, was occupied by Mrs. Bisbee. The richest quarter upstairs were 4 small sleeping rooms. Behind the hotel was a barn and a spring home, but an overflowing brook. Laura was often called to fetch butter and milk from the spring house, where it was kept ice cold A fish pond was in the yard, and Silver Creek angled across the lot full of speckled trout, or described the Burr Oak house as altogether a very fine place. The hotel was busy, established visitors constantly came times a day. Hungry guests lined along the dining tables in the lower level of the hotel. Dances and weddings sometimes were held there. Some people lived at the hotel permanently. They were called the study boarders, and were treated with extra care. Mr. and Mr. Stedman, with their three boys, Johnny, Reuben, and Tommy, had already settled into the hotel when the Ingalls family arrived. It had been agreed that Pa and Ma would help operate the hotel with the Stedmans, and engaged for living space and a part of the profit. Pa immediately became very busy helping around the hotel. Ma worked hard with Miss Stedman and hired a girl doing the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Mary and Laura made beds, washed dishes, and waited on tables. Mrs. Stedman also begged the girls to wash their youngest boys. Tommy Amy, the hired girl, knew many stories about to watch her youngest boy, Tommy. Amy, the hired the girl, knew many stories about the people who had previously owned the hotel, and about the guests too. When Laura asked Amy about the hole in the dining room door, she learned that it was a built hole. It had been made by the son of Mr. Masters, the former owner of the hotel. Will Masters' wife had been running from him because he was drunk. She had slammed the kitchen door, and Will had shot his gun right through it. The bullet hole in the door was thrilling to us children, Laura said. Pa and Ma were concerned when they saw that a saloon stood next door to the hotel. It was this very saloon that had tempted Will Master. The reason his father had sold the hotel was to take Will far away from the saloon out west to Walnut Grove. The Burr Oak was a brick building in the 2 rooms not far from the hotel. Mary and Laura started attending along with the Stedman boys, perhaps Carrie unrolled too. She was past 6. Miss Sarah Dolan was the teacher in primary room. William Red was secondary teacher and principal. Laura knew him well because she lived at the hotel. Around Christmas time, a group of big, scuffing farm boys started coming to school not to learn, but to be unruly and to drive Mr. Reid out of town. They busted the crowd in the saloon that rather would be gone for after Christmas. The worst of the boys was named Moose. He led the others in mischief and noise. When he walked into the schoolroom, tardy, Mr. Wright quietly asked him to come to his desk. Laura said, "The rest of the students are spellbound, hoping that Mr. Wright would not get hurt." But quickly as Moose approached the desk, Mr. Wright tricked him. Moose fell across the teacher's knees and was whipped, sounding with a roller. When Mr. Wright was through, Moose walked through the door and never returned. His friends also scolded away, and school went on peacefully, except for the sledding down the long hill behind the hotel. Christmas was not very happy for Laura. The family so missed Freddie, though Ma was accepting a new baby in the spring. The work in the hotel kept Pa and Ma too occupied to plan the holidays. Besides, there were no place in the crowd hotel to celebrate, and then the Ingalls girls and then the 7 boys all got the measles. Laura knew that Pa and Ma were talking of leaving the hotel. But before this happened, Laura was forced to spend hours with the best paying boarder in the hotel, Mr. Beesby. He decided to teach Laura to sing, and every day she had to practice the musical scales. He taught her over the sounds of noisy hotel, Laura sang patiently, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Pa and Ma found rooms to rent over at the grocery store, 2 doors from the hotel on the other side of the saloon. The family moved into a quiet, pleasant apartment for the rest of the winter. Pa worked at a mill where the farmers came to have their corn and wheat grown up. Pa's horses were hitched to a millstone and walked around in a circle, grinding the grain. The Ingalls girls enjoyed school during the winter of 1877. Mary had received Independence, the 5th reader, for her 12th birthday on January 10th. The book continued wonderful staring poems, speeches, and stories such as Paul Revere's Ride. The Vigils, Blacksmith, Bears Out for the Holiday, Snowbound. Mr. Red was incautiousness was taught the girls how to read aloud with the feeling and emotion. Laura said she was always grateful for this training. Pa told her later that the crowd of men used to gather in the grocery store just below the Ingalls, sitting around to listen while she and Mary recited and practiced their reading lessons. Pa and Ma's worries about the saloon next door came true late one night. It caught fire, and Ma awakened Mary and Laura and Carrie, telling them to dress quickly in the case their place are burning. 2. Ma and the girls stood by the front of the windows, looking down at the group of Burr Oak men lined up in the front of the town pump. They had started a bucket bridge to pass the filled pails down the line. The people poured out on the flames, but the line seemed to be standing still. Ma kept saying, why don't they hurry? Norfine moved. Finally, Pa gave a shout and jerked Mr. Bisbee away from the flowing pump. In his panic, he had been pumping water into a pail and no bottom, screaming fire, but doing nothing to stop the blaze. At the last saloon, fire was put out. Pa came in tired and smoky and grumbling. He told the girls that if each darn saloon could have burned without taking the rest of the Burr Oak, he could have it. He had let it happen. He would carry one drop of water to save the wild saloon like that. Pa and Ma didn't like the girls so near the saloon, so they rented a red brick house on the edge of Burr Oak from Mr. Beesby, and the family moved again. The comfortable house stood near and Oak Woods, and everyone was so happy to be there. Pa had bought a cow, and once again Laura had a job of taking the cow to the pasture in the morning and bringing her home at night. Laura was 10 and had to wear shoes all day, but she was always went barefoot to get the cow. Springtime in Burr Oak was green and fresh, sweet smelling with the scent of wildflowers and newy plowed black fields. School started long and Tedis and Laura was happy when the entry closed. She had worked hard to learn multiplication tables in that year. After many takes, she finally mastered them. Laura was busy helping Ma that spring because he knew baby was soon to be born. One day, Laura recalled, when I came back from an errand, had taken me a long time. I found I knew little sister. Her hair was golden like Mary's, and her eyes were bright like blue like Pa's. The date was May 23rd, 1877, and the name Pa and Ma chose. Their 4th daughter was Grace Pearl. There was a delightful summer, Laura remembered. Work and play was so mixed that I could not tell them apart. Helping to tend Grace was fun, taking and bringing the cow marked mornings and evenings and playing with Carrie and Mary and their friends kept Laura busy. Pa worked all summer for whoever would hire him. He could help on farms or work as a carpenter, but his wages were not enough to support a big family of 4 growing girls. Laura was not surprised to hear from him talking going west again. The summer days were so long and unhappy, and the brick house was so comfortable that Laura never thought her family was poor, but other people in Burr Oak did, and they thought they could help Pa and Ma out by raising one of their girls. Dr. and Mr. Starr was among Burr Oak's most important citizens. They liked Laura so much, and no afternoon, when she came from bringing the cow home, Laura saw Mrs. Starr thinking earnestly of Ma. She was saying that her girls and Fanny were grown away teaching, and she was only for a girl around her big house. She and the doctor had talked it over, and they wanted Pa and Ma to give them Laura for their own. Ma listened politely, but much to Laura's great relief, she said that she and Pa not possibly spared that Laura Mrs. Starr went away. Very sad her empty house when Laura fought off her offer of his wife without her own family. She tried to forget Mrs. Starr's visit as quick as she could. Pa was restless thinking of the West and how hard he had to work to stay in place. He did not like his fiddle played marching, moving songs. He wanted to go west again, and he knew Wanna Grow suited him better than Burr Oak. He sold the cow and covered the wagon once more. Very early, one cool autumn morning, before sunrise, Pa and Ma finished loading the wagon and helped their sleepy girls inside before the sun rose. They had driven 3 miles to Minnesota State while Burr Oak was behind them. They were back in Minnesota, and Pa turned the wagon west. We were all so happy about going west again. Laura recalled, yes, the West was the best. Laura fought the past years as the wagon plowed on the way back to Wanna Grow. They had lost Freddie, but gained Grace. They have lived in many places among many people. Pa had learned that an old, crowded place was not for him. I knew Pa was happy. Laura said of the return to western Minnesota, the fiddle music he played along the road, West oozing, rockling to the stars. Pa played and sang marching for Georgia, the Star Spangled Banner, Yankee Doodle, and the Arkansas Traveler. To Laura, Burr Oak seemed like a dream from which he had equated. Okay, let's again.